Anyway, thank you all so much for being here. We're really looking forward to sharing a little bit more about the Beyond Akeela community with you all, and appreciate you taking some time to be with us during your busy lives. Beyond Akeela is obviously something that Pratt and I love and has been my life's work for the past 10 plus years or so now. And I'm really excited about how the program's evolved over the years, especially the past 7 years or so, since we've really sort of honed in on the college campus model. And again, just excited to share that with you all this evening. Just like at camp, just going to preview what you can expect for the next 45 minutes to an hour or so. So I'm going to just put up a quick agenda here. I'm not going to read all these words to you right now, but this is just a general outline of what we're going to be talking about tonight. You can talk about different types of activities that we do, who our campers are, different goals and outcomes, things like that. We're going to start really big picture and start getting down into more of the nitty gritty as the night goes on. We'll stop about halfway through for questions too. So if you have questions, please put them in the chat. You can put them in the chat to everyone, or you can send them directly to Pratt, whose name is Beyond Akeela Pratt. And then we'll get to them about a halfway point, and then we'll do more Q&A at the end as well. But really, I think we recognize, in doing something like this over Zoom, camp is not Zoom. We 2020, we're like, oh, should we do virtual programming? We're like, no, that's not camp. We're not going to do something like that. So I recognize this is not the best format for you to really feel like the magic of camp and the transformative experiences that we really create over the summer. But I'm hopeful through the imagery and just how we talk about camp and what you see tonight and here tonight gives you a good sense of the unique experience that we create for teens and how we help really launch them towards successful college transitions. So with that, we're going to get started. And first, we're just going to do some quick introductions of who we are. So this is a picture of my family. That's my wife, Kristen, there, and our two boys, Simon and Arlo. They are twins, and they are going to be turning 5 this summer, which I cannot believe is happening. So kindergarten is coming up for them next year. They definitely keep us on our toes, and we're very fortunate over the summer. They have their own little day camp experience. They have some nannies who help take care of them up around where we are at camp. So we're very fortunate to have that on the side for them, so we can really focus on running camp. Kristen, as I mentioned, is my wife and co-director of Beyond Akeela. She really focuses more on the social emotional learning components of camp and group dynamics, staff support, things like that. Her background is in educational counseling. She's a school counselor in Philadelphia for middle school students here, and has started camp, I think, in 2015 and hasn't turned back since. So she's been with Akeela for quite some time. I started with Akeela in 2009 and just kept coming back seasonally. They couldn't get rid of me. I fell in love with what we were doing at Akeela, came back in different leadership roles seasonally. And then in 2013, this became my life's work and my career year round, still is today. And Beyond Akeela for the past 8 years or so has really been my main focus and developing our program. And I think one of the things I love most about what we get to do too, not only just the summer, but is also outside of the summer, connecting with families, being a resource for families, talking about their teens' college transition and just the relationships we get to build and see teens grow with at camp is really special to me, and part of why why I love being able to do this, not just again in the summer, but also from a year-round perspective. So that is me and my family, and I'm just going to let Pratt, who you met briefly already, introduce herself now.
Hi, everyone. My name is Pratt. I'm the assistant director for Beyond Akeela. I grew up in India, and then I moved to the US for my higher education. So I have my bachelor's in psychology from UCLA, and I started working with neurodivergent youth at the hospital while I was there. I worked there full time after I graduated. And I had my master's in social work from NYU, and I found Beyond Akeela while I was in my master's program, and I fell in love with it. And I'm really grateful that I get to do this year round now and get to meet folks and talk about camp. Over the summer, I work as like the head advisor for the foundation cohort, which is our youngest cohort. And so you'll find me and see me around all summer. And yeah, I feel super grateful to be here and talk about camp. And I'm going to pass it back on to Kevin. Thank you.
Gotta unmute myself there. My dog came downstairs and I didn't want it to distract the sound in the background. Anyway, let's get started now with just some really big big picture, quick facts about Beyond Akeela, who we are. Idea here is that I'm trying to paint a picture of camp for you a little bit so that you have some sense of what we're talking about as we get more into philosophy and activities and things like that, get a better sense of what it really looks like. So Camp Akeela, which I know we have some people on this call who have been there before, is our traditional New England summer camp for children ages 9 to 16. And that was founded in 2008. Again, I started in 2009. So I've really been with Akeela sort of since foundation, which has been a really exciting thing to see how it's grown and evolved over the years. Beyond Akeela started about 3 years later. We heard from families who were exiting camp after their 10th grade summer, looking for more, wanting more life skill development, chances to practice independence and things like that. And so we started Beyond Akeela. Back then, it was actually on our New England Summer Camp campus in Vermont. And since like I said, the past 7, 8 years or so, it's evolved in a lot of ways, but really the main way it's evolved at that point in time was we transitioned it to a college campus model and really focused more on college readiness and practicing a lot of these skills that we're going to talk about in a more organic college campus setting. We do 2.5 week sessions over the summer. About 50 teens will attend each session, and some teens will do both. So about 10% of our population each summer will do both sessions. There's really enough choices you'll see in the programming that even though it's a repeat in terms of everything that we're doing, there's enough choice that you can get a different, unique experience in both sessions. So certainly if that's something that families are interested in, don't hesitate to ask, and we can certainly talk about what that looks like for teens at camp. We have about 20 experienced staff members with us every summer seasonally. That includes, professional leadership team, a registered nurse who's on staff who does a lot of the medication administration too. Happy to answer more specific questions about medication at camp and how that works as we go through the call here. And then last summer was actually our first summer at Curry College in Milton, Massachusetts. So just outside Boston, about 30 minutes from downtown. Traffic pending, of course. It was a great move for us. We had spent the previous few years at Franklin Pierce University up in New Hampshire, but Curry has been a great host. Milton being so close to Boston, there's a plethora of resources around us, and we do a lot with the community around camp. It's been a really great location for us. And the last thing, and this is going to segue into us starting to talk more about philosophy and our community, is that we are not your run-of-the-mill academic pre-college program. That is so far from who we are. We are a program that's really focused on social connection, practicing the executive function skills that are really necessary to thrive in college, and also self-advocacy. As many of you know, these are some of the skills that are really important for the times you're not necessarily in class in college, which is the majority of your time when you're in college. And these are often some of the skills too that a lot of our teens are developing and more emerging skills for some of our teens. And we want to give them more opportunities to practice these skills in that organic college environment. So that's really why we focus on those skills as opposed to your typical academic pre-college type of model. So what that means for us is community is really, really important. We really believe in the power of creating a really strong camp community amongst our campers and staff. The connections that we see forming between campers, between staff, between campers and staff are really unique and really special. And we think and really strongly believe those types of relationships, that community, that sense of connection people feel, lead to the really great outcomes that we see our campers making over the course of the summer. They're stepping out of their comfort zone. They're more confident doing so, just trying something new. And that's really where the real learning occurs, taking a positive social risk, trying something new. Those are where you're going to have successes and mistakes and opportunities to learn from those different situations. And that's really our model is all about building skills through experiential learning as opposed to sitting down in a classroom and sort of talking about different skills. That is what we really believe leads to the great successes and positive outcomes that our teens walk away from camp with. And again, this is not a picture from Beyond Akeela, to be really clear. I did take it from the internet, so any IP lawyers out there, feel free to reach out after, but this is not something that you would see at camp. You're never going to feel like you're in a lecture hall just being talked to by staff about X, Y, or Z or social skill X. That is not, again, what we believe in. We believe in this. Lots of friendship, lots of fun, and using these organic, endless interactions between teens and between us and the community to coach our campers and help them develop the confidence and self-awareness in who they are, and also the confidence that they can overcome some of the hurdles that college is going to present for them down the road, and give them some real experience with that, whether it's navigating a roommate relationship or just being on a college campus and having to live independently in that type of setting for the first time. So again, that's really what our focus in running camp is really all about. And a lot of it too is bringing together the right group of neurodivergent teens. And that's a big part of Pratt and I's work over the summer, or sorry, not over the summer, but excuse me, during the school year, is meeting with lots of families, meeting lots of campers, and really setting those campers up for success by making sure we're going to have the right type of peer group, the right type of support for them to really thrive at Beyond Akeela. And just to give a brief sense of what that profile typically is, I know it doesn't exist anymore, but the Asperger's profile is typically how most people would describe our community. So now we see ASD level 1, ADHD, more of the inattentive type, and VLD, but teens who are, academically at grade level, sort of on par with peers for the most part, average to above average intelligence, quick-witted, funny, well-liked in their communities, and working more on social development and social interactions with their peers, oftentimes working a little bit more on executive function, being an emerging skill for them too, and just, again, being better self-advocates, seeking out help appropriately when they need it. So that's a brief overview. And certainly we talk with the families a lot more in depth about their teens and making sure that it feels like the right type of fit for them while they're at Beyond Akeela. So we like to look at Beyond Akeela. Obviously, a lot of people talk about the word like independence, and I think there's sort of two ways that we look at independence at Beyond Akeela. The first of which is freedom and choice, and I think that's probably the more exciting, way we look at it, the lens we look at it through. So freedom and choice, teens who are coming to Beyond Akeela are ready for a little bit more freedom in their summer experience. They're ready to make more choices in their programming, not just be told to follow a certain schedule. And that agency is really important for them to have successful summers at Beyond Akeela. So we create a lot of opportunities for them to make independent decisions, whether that's about their program or just general day-to-day things that are going on, like their routines, managing their time, et cetera. There's a lot of that decision-making that's going to happen from the camper end with supportive staff, of course. Choice-based activities. We want campers to control their schedule as much as possible and really just advocate for themselves over the course of the summer. I'll say we have this really great program that we believe in, and sometimes some of the best activities or just spontaneous moments that come up at camp are what make camp really special and great for teens. And they're going to be the moments that they remember too when they advocate, hey, I really want to help lead trivia tonight. Great. That's awesome. We were able to do that with the camper last summer, and it was a really important experience for him. He's going to be back again this summer. So again, the more teens advocate for their experience, I think the better the outcomes that they see are. Similarly, with freedom too comes a little bit more of independent opportunities to socialize, whether that's on campus around Curry, on different day trips. We go into Boston, and we set up structured parameters to make sure that it's done safely, but giving teens more opportunities to sort of socialize in small groups without the presence of a staff member around all the time. Again, 16 to 19-year-olds are ready for that level of social independence, and we want to give them more opportunities to do that within our program as well. So what comes with freedom and choice is responsibility. This is a big one. And this is something that, we want to help teens, again, practice some of the, just the life responsibilities that come with living independently, away from home, on a college campus, and the different things you have to do to sort of take care of yourself and be a good community member around others as well. So, different things that we're working on there: executive function, managing your time, getting yourself up and ready to go in the morning, managing your different routines, getting places on campus a little bit more independently than you might at a traditional summer camp, let's say. From a life skill standpoint, have opportunities to cook for yourself, go grocery shopping, as you see in this picture here, manage your own laundry, manage your money over the course of the 2.5 weeks. So again, these are just life skills that some teens maybe have some more practice with at home or more experience with, and some teens are still working on maybe, and it will be newer. And the really great thing about camp is that we really individualize this experience so that teens can get the coaching and scaffolded support from staff members that is individualized to them as opposed to a one-size-fits-all approach. So how we help Tina with her laundry is going to differ from, how we're going to help Tom with his laundry based on their levels of experience in doing laundry. And that's a very basic example, let's say, but that's sort of the mindset that we are training our staff to work with our teams on over the summer. And with that, we're going to talk about our staff a little bit and the coaching model. Well, this will be our last slide before we do our first break to do some Q&A. So if you do have some questions at this point, feel free to put them in the chat. So, we are a coaching model. We are not this, a social skills curriculum or life skills curriculum that everyone is following. We really try to, again, individualize the experience for every team through coaching from our really well-trained and experienced staff. I'm going to brag about them for just a minute here. You already heard from Pratt, who's our assistant director and one of our head advisors. We have a team of similarly experienced head advisors working alongside Pratt on our team. And we have our registered nurse. And then also we have a team of young adults who are currently college students, often completing their junior or senior year of college, coming in from backgrounds of education, psychology, special education, speech language pathology. These are the future educators, counselors, therapists of the world who are really using Beyond Akeela as professional development experience for themselves as well. And they also self-select into Beyond Akeela. These are people who want to have a pie thrown in their face in front of the entire camp because that's a fun thing to do at summer camp. And so these are people who are going to be building a lot of rapport with your teens, really focused on using those relationships that they're forming with your teens to help them have a more successful experience and hone in on the skills that they want to work on. Each teen is going to have an advisor who they have multiple one-on-one conversations with throughout the summer to really focus on, hey, these are some of the skills I really want to work on while I'm here. How can we create some more opportunities for me to practice these skills while we're at camp within our structured programming? We're going to talk a little bit more about activities, et cetera, things like that in just a minute here. But again, the coaching is scaffolded. Staff are really trained to identify, early on sort of where teens might need a little bit more support, and then hone in on that with the camper, provide maybe a little bit more support and coaching initially, whether that's, how to enter into a group conversation that's going on in the lounge. The support that they offer on day 2 is going to look very different from the support they offer on day 5. Day 5 is maybe it's a little bit less. Day 10, less. Again, you're sort of peeling layers back of support. So our campers are working more confidently and more independently on some of the skills that they are interested in pursuing while they're at camp. And with that, I'm going to take a quick break and take a drink of water here, and we'll get to some questions that you all have. So Pratt, if you don't mind starting some questions, that'd be great.
Our first question is, do we offer financial aid?
Yes, that is a great question. So we do offer financial aid. I'm going to stop the screen share here for a second, and we'll get it back started here in a minute. We do offer financial aid. We work with a scholarship foundation that's called Camp Launcher. They provide need-based scholarships to families. We also have our own individual allocation of scholarships too. So when Camp Launcher can't support the needs of a family from a scholarship standpoint, we do have our own allocation. I would say 99% of the time we have made camp work for families regardless of their financial situation. So if that is a concern of yours, you're not sure if you're going to qualify for the need-based aid, please reach out, set up payment plans. Again, there are very few instances that we haven't been able to make it work.
Awesome. Our next question is camp trans friendly?
Yes, absolutely. So we're going to talk a little bit more about dorm life in a minute, but we have different options for dorm life. I would say, generally speaking, we have a very open community. People are putting pronouns typically on their door, on their name tags on their doors. It's a very open, welcoming community. We talk a lot about respect and people's identities, where they're coming from throughout camp. So yes, we have trans campers every year, non-binary campers, cisgender campers, and we've never had issues with a trans camper feeling unwelcome in our environment by any means.
And the second part to that question is there plenty of time for campers to be alone for those who need time to recharge?
Yeah, definitely. So we do have a really structured schedule, and we'll sort of give you a screenshot of what that looks like in a minute here. Um, our days are definitely filled with activities, but we know that a lot of our teens benefit from downtime, time just to themselves. So we do build that into the schedule. Typically, there's an hour right after lunch that is dedicated, what we call rest hour. That's a chance for teens just to sort of relax and reset, listen to music, read a book, hang out. It can be like a social time too for teens who still want that. There's also an hour before dinner that we call free time, and certainly a time that we're not sort of like requiring that teens are doing something quiet during that time. A lot of teens still choose to do that, I'd say. And then in the evenings, we're usually done by 8:15, 8:30 with our evening activity. We'll do quick huddles, and then campers have some downtime then and free time then. So a lot of that downtime too can turn to social time, and I would say is for a lot of our teens. But we just encourage teens to take the time that they need during those downtimes to reset and recharge if they feel like that's what they need.
And then if you could go over what our policies on electronics are.
Yes, great question. Electronics. So, campers at Beyond Akeela can bring MP3 players and old school ones. So, not like the new generation iPods that have Wi-Fi and apps and everything like that, or e-readers. And those are really the two types of tech that teens bring. So, I did not mention cell phones, tablets, computers. I know those are things that we all often live with and use in our day-to-day lives and often use during downtime as well. The reason that we don't allow those at camp is because they become massive social distractors and really take away from the outcomes that we're working on. And if we were an academic program that wasn't as focused on social connection, I think we would have those things. But since we are so focused on creating great social connections between our campers and have seen amazing outcomes in that realm, we don't allow the cell phones. We have tried it back in, I think it was 2016 that we tried that, and it did not go well. I can share that from experience. The outcomes from that summer were not nearly as good as what we've seen from other summers.
Our next question is, do all the kids have roommates?
Yes, they do. We're going to talk about the roommate process in just a minute, but yes, everyone has roommates.
Awesome. What is the policy on bringing snacks from home?
Snacks from home are okay to bring to camp. We encourage healthier options as opposed to just bringing a bunch of junk food, but we do not sort of control or make a big deal out of food. We do also provide snacks multiple times a day that are like, chips and sometimes some fruit, things like that that are available for teens as well.
Awesome. And the next question is, can we accommodate food for like food allergies for teens?
Yeah, absolutely. As long as teens are sort of comfortable uh, understanding what their allergies are and communicating about it with, the adults that are helping them eat, it's always worked. So we work with the campus dining hall. We share all the list of allergies that our campers and staff come to camp with. And they run a kitchen for 4,000 students over the course of the year. So they're feeding a ton of people each day. They have an allergen-free zone specifically in their dining hall too. If you have specific questions about your teens' allergens and things that you'd want to make sure that we're aware of and how we can best support them, certainly it's a great individual conversation for us to have. But really it's a nut-free kitchen too. So it's not like they're serving out peanuts or tree nuts or anything like that. Yeah, so we always make that work.
Awesome. Our next question is, what is communication like with parents from campers and from camp?
Yeah, great question. So two-parter. So from campers, the one piece of tech that I forgot to mention that we already have at camp and comes from Beyond Akeela is we have laptops and we have computer rooms on the dorm floors. Those are set up and really open during those unstructured times that I mentioned during the day so that campers can email back and forth with home. They're not there so that people can go down YouTube rabbit holes and search, whatever, or play games. We do not operate in a police state either. So it's not like we have a staff member who's in there constantly watching what's going on in the computers. But they are aware, like if a team says, oh, I'm going to go to the computer room and they haven't come back 15 minutes later, they're probably just going to go check to see what's going on. But it's something that, we ask teams to self-manage. And again, it's a great opportunity for you to have, really daily communication with teams if you'd like to. From beyond Akeela, so as Pratt mentioned, she's a head advisor. We have a team of head advisors also who would be for each cohort. So each cohort is going to have one head advisor, and that person is going to be each family's main point of contact over the course of the summer and connect with you at least 3 different times about your team's progress. The first is going to be within the first couple of days of camp, just to let you know how they're settling in. And then the other updates will be a little bit more detailed about the progress that we're seeing, the skills that they're working on, the friendships that they're making, things like that. And also, too, if there are challenges that are coming up, we're going to talk with you about ways that we can partner with you to better support your team while they're with us at camp. I should note too, we also post daily news items and blogs and photos every day as well. So you'll get a good picture just if you're, just scrolling your news feed. Let's say we have an app that we will introduce to families soon. That you'll get a good sense of what's going on at camp on a daily basis.
Awesome. Can kids participate if they've just completed 12th grade?
Yes, so that would be our post-grad cohort. That's actually our next slide that we're going to be talking about.
Awesome. And our last question is for a family that joined late, if you could cover again where we're located.
Yeah, we're at Curry College in Milton, Massachusetts, just outside of Boston. So it's about 30 minutes away from the city or downtown.
Awesome. And one more, if folks have therapy, if they can do it virtually, weekly therapy virtually at camp.
Yes, so that is something that we can set up. We ask that it sort of happens during some of those downtimes that I mentioned earlier, but we have set that up for teams each summer. There's a conversation that we'll have with you if we feel like it's really important for them to continue. A lot of teams will take a break from it while they're at camp as well. But again, it's sort of up to you and your therapist, or your child's therapist, I should say, if you think it's a good idea to continue while they're at camp. Awesome. Really great questions, everyone. Thank you for that. I saw one just come in. I think we should get back to the slides, and we'll make sure we get to that question towards the end here as we keep going. So I am going to reshare my screen here in just 1 second. All right. Hopefully people can see the screen. Great. So this is a breakdown just of our cohort. So we started really big picture. We're going to start to define camp a little bit more, and again, hopefully paint a really nice picture of what it looks like for you. So we have 3 different cohorts, and these cohorts are really age groups at camp. And they're smaller groups of about 15-ish people. The transition group is typically a little bit bigger, so often we'll split it into 2 separate cohorts so that they have more manageable groups to socialize with. But really the goal is to give groups or give teams at camp a smaller group of people that they're going to be living with, eating meals with, and having more of that unstructured time with. And that helps, we know that helps our teams feel a little bit more socially comfortable being one of 15 versus one of 50. It makes a really big difference for how they feel connected with one another. There's going to be also a staff of about 5 people. It's about a 1-to-3 ratio within each cohort as well. So foundation, as Pratt mentioned, that's our youngest groups, typically current high school sophomores going into their junior year. Then we have our transition group, which is rising seniors, so current juniors. And then post-grad group is current high school seniors who have just graduated. And then there are times too, we'll have teens who have done a gap year. We'll typically have 1 or 2 teens who've done a gap year who are in the community in the post-grad cohort as well. Again, these are really just, these are not programmatic cohorts. So a lot of what I'm going to show you in a minute here when it comes to activities that we're doing are going to be mixed groups. So everyone's going to be doing all of these things. There's a few things that we do separate out that I'll note. But for the most part, if you're in foundation, you're still going to be doing activities with post-grad and transition too, but you'll also have that smaller cohort of people to sort of come back home to, so to speak, when you come to the dorm. So speaking of dorms, let's talk a little bit about dorm life at Beyond Akeela, which I think is really fun and a really big part of what we do. So it's very classic dorm style living. We have mixed gender floors and wings as well. So again, you're going to live. Each team at camp is going to live with their cohort. So the foundation group is going to live together, transition, etc. Within each cohort, there's going to be 3 different sort of living sections. One's going to be a men's section, one's going to be a women's section, and one's going to be a gender neutral section. And then within each of those, teens will have roommates who have also, selected into that section of living. We just sent out a roommate survey so people can give us their preferences about that as well. And then each floor is also going to have a men's bathroom, a women's bathroom, and a gender neutral bathroom. And those are all communal bathrooms too. And there's private shower stalls, though, private toilets. There's a lot of privacy in the bathrooms, even though it is a communal environment. We got a question about roommates already, which is great, but I'll quickly touch on roommates. Yes, everyone does have a roommate, and we do our best to really pair everyone at camp together with someone we think that they're going to get along with really well. So we send out a roommate survey that will help us collect information about interests, sleep habits, things like that. We do our best to pair people together, again, we think they're going to get along with and coexist with. And there are still times that come up where teens have little disagreements with their roommate, and that's when the staff come in. The staff live on the floors as well. It's a 1-to-3 ratio. They sort of just live interspersed throughout the floor in single rooms, and they are very present. It's not like we go back for the unstructured times and the staff just go to their room. Staff are on. That's one of the more important times for staff to be on, I'd say, during camp. But they're there to help facilitate conversations between campers. If there is a roommate disagreement about something, maybe work on a roommate agreement together to help them solve that conflict. Whether it's the music's too loud or this side of the room is too messy and I can't find my things. All right, let's work together to solve this, and we've never split up roommates because they just didn't get along with one another or because the music was too loud or anything like that. We're always able to help them work through it because that's what's going to happen when they're in college too. And then the last thing I'll say about our dorms is we have some really great lounges that teens will hang out in. Each cohort has its own lounge, and then this is actually a picture of our main lounge right in the center of the dorm. But it's really lively community. They're in some of those unstructured times for campers to hang out in. And the other thing I'll mention is we do have air conditioning. I imagine that might have been on some people's minds, but it's certainly something that makes a really big difference, I'll say. In previous years, we have not had it. Last summer was the first year we had it, and it was really, really nice to have, I will say, over the summer. So let's talk a little bit now more about what the program really looks like. And this is going to be the last set of slides before we get into more Q&A here towards the end. And I'm going to take a quick drink, and then we're going to go into what a sample week would look like, and then a little bit more into the nitty-gritty of what each of these activities looks like too. As you can see, there isn't really a typical day here at Beyond Akeela, but we do sort of have typical weeks, and the weeks have a very consistent flow to them. So, the week 2 of camp would look very similar to this, maybe with just different trips mixed in, but the Tuesday, Thursday, Friday would flow very similarly. So we keep some levels of consistency, but also offer some flexibility within the schedule. And it is a balance of both structured and unstructured activities. As I mentioned earlier on the call, there are those set down times. We don't show them in this just because it gets there's too much information on the screen when we do that. But this, as you can see, is just a general overview of the program itself. And one thing that's important to note too is that, as I mentioned choice earlier, teens are going to pre-select a lot of these activities while they're at camp. So we'll send out a survey that teens complete before they arrive. And they'll give us their, between the community service options, which, rank your top 5, et cetera, for each of these different things that you're seeing on the screen, really. And then we're going to create a customized schedule for each teen that they're going to receive when they get to camp. And that will be something that they use as a guide, sort of like when you're in college, as a guide to their time at camp. So they really know what to expect from each day. We do lots of previewing. That's really important. We know our teens do best when they feel like they know what to expect and what's coming up for them. So there's previewing, nightly huddles, morning huddles within cohorts. We do larger evening meetings too. But again, this is the general structure of what camp is going to look like. So now we're going to talk a little bit more in detail about what each of these activities is. And this information is also all on our website too. When we send out the recording, we'll send a link to this so that you can look at it in a little bit more detail as a family, if that would be helpful for you. So first, we'll talk a little bit more about camp activities. Camp activities are just really fun, lightly structured activities facilitated by our staff each year. We do things like art, music, creative writing, sports, wilderness survival, theater, yoga, mindfulness, a range of different things. Dungeons and Dragons, as you can see here on the right side, that's Carson, our DM. That's one of our most popular activities for sure. We have a lot of teens who really enjoy D&D, and also teens who will do that during their unstructured time at camp as well. But these are really, just chances to have fun, interact with some other teens who share similar interests to you while you're at camp. So again, these are all choice-based too. Each teen will self-select into 2 different camp activities that they'll do for a period of 4 activities, and then they'll do another activity for 4 different activity periods. So they have a little bit of consistency with the group that they're doing the activities with. I mentioned community service earlier. This is one of the bigger and I'd say more popular parts of our program as well. And it's a great chance for our teens to get some recurring job-like experience at an organization in our community. So a great opportunity to work on job skills and workplace relationships. Teens are going back with a consistent group of 4 to 5 teens and 1 staff member, and then working with a very consistent volunteer coordinator or team of volunteer coordinators at an organization. And they'll go back 7 different times for about an hour and a half to 2 hours at a time. It's choice-based, so teens are choosing a project or site that sort of aligns most closely with their interests and the options that we've had in previous summers and are looking forward to again this summer: local libraries, public and campus libraries, YMCA recreation departments and day camps, local grocery stores, collective share farms, conservancy opportunities as well. And then one other one that we recently started last year actually was a Beyond Akeela podcast. It's available on Spotify. If you're interested, you can go take a listen. But our teens took basically created from scratch, out of nothing. We said, here's an idea, run with it. And they did. And it was a really great opportunity for them to do some project-based learning. It was a team of 8 campers facilitated by a couple staff members. Pratt also spent a lot of time with that group too, helping facilitate. But they really created the whole podcast from scratch. And there was creating intro music, figuring out how to record, how to edit, coming up with content. They talked to a professional podcaster who also happened to be a camp mom and learned different tips and tricks for doing the podcast. It was a really cool experience and something that we'll have a chance for teens to do again. As we know, there's more opportunities these days to sort of create your persona online through YouTube and things like that. We want to give our teens a chance to practice some of that skill set and see what it feels like too. So that is the community service element of camp. Next, we're going to talk a little bit more about the college readiness and curriculum components of the camp. And I know I said we don't have a curriculum earlier. We do run these things called curriculum sessions, which are guided conversations that are led by our staff and sometimes Curry faculty or ed consultants who come in and support our program as well on a variety of topics that we feel are really important for teens who are in high school and thinking about life after high school, thinking about college. So the topics will range from things like healthy relationships to navigating social life in college, how high school is going to feel different from college from an academic standpoint, what the different expectations are going to be from your professors versus your teachers in high school. Some are going to be more vocational focused and resume building, doing mock interviews. We'll do some that are just more life skill focused about nutrition, money management, budgeting, time management, all those different things. And these are things that campers are gonna self-select into. They're gonna make a choice between 2 or 3 different options for each time we're offering a curriculum session. And as you can see, these are small group discussions. This is not us sitting in a lecture hall talking about time management and having people take notes. They're actively participating, reflecting on their own time management skills and thinking about ways that maybe they can enhance that or continue to practice them while they're at Beyond Akeela. We also will do some college visits for our foundation cohort, a chance to, and these are options too for the transition and postgrad cohorts if they'd like to go, but chances to explore local universities around where we are. Teens can also explore Curry College in a college visit if they'd like to. But the picture you see here is Dean College. It's a small liberal arts school that also, like Curry, caters really well to a neurodivergent learner. They have a specific support program too for teens to get a little extra support through college if they're interested in that. And then we also do visits to schools like Bridgewater State, a bigger public school in just outside Boston as well, and give teens an opportunity to feel out the differences between, what a small school feels like versus a big school. So we know that a lot of our teens aren't going to be applying to these schools necessarily, but we want to give them a chance to feel out, what does it feel like when I'm on this campus versus that campus, as I'm starting to think about schools that I might want to apply to more or take more visits to. And then there's also workshops for some of our older teens about the college application process, writing an effective college essay. We'll do some on accessing accommodations in college and how that differs from high school. And also for some of our older teens in the post-grad cohort, doing workshops on, excuse me, like creating a transition roadmap and spelling out, how am I going to stay socially connected? When are the, meetings that I'm going to go to for orientation or, the club orientation day, and being able to meet different people from different clubs and maybe fill out which ones I want to go to. What's my meal plan going to be? But really spelling all of that out for them to help ease some of that maybe ambiguity of what their college transition is actually going to look like. And I think part of what, that program in and of itself, we think is great. Part of what enhances it, though, is the staff debriefing some of these experiences with our teens after, talking through, hey, what did you think about that college when you visited it? And I can't tell you how many times we hear campers really reflecting on, that felt great. I love that place, and I actually want to apply there. And that actually happened a couple times last summer from different teens. And then sometimes, like, I was a little overwhelmed by that. We visited UMass Amherst a couple years ago, and it's this massive state school. And some teams were like, that's just not for me. And so it's a great chance for them just to sort of review these things with staff who get them and understand them, and help them, again, process and really take some tangible things away from their time at camp and from these workshops as well. All right, so the next activity we'll talk about is health and wellness. As you saw on the schedule, this is sort of like exercise time for us at Beyond Akeela. We really want to give teens a chance to practice healthy living. That's a really important part of what we do. And we are going to infuse that into camp in a couple different ways. Teens can choose from a variety of different opportunities to be active during this time of day. It's about an hour long, going to the gym, using the weights there, or with the machines, the ellipticals, etc. Sometimes it's playing a sport. The picture you see on the right here is a game called Seven Stones that was brought to camp by our Armenian program director from the past couple of years, and was a major hit. Probably the most popular exercise time activity every day that we did it. But again, we just create different ways for our teens to be active in one way or another. Sometimes it's like a dance party or playing just dance on a rainy day, in front of a screen on camp. Going for a swim at the pool on campus as well. So there are opportunities for teens to practice infusing their, just being active into their lifestyle and into their routines at camp, and sort of realize how they may be able to replicate that, or think about how they'll replicate that in their home lives as well. And then another way we do this, as you saw earlier, menu planning, grocery shopping. Teens will have a chance to cook one meal along with their peers while they're at camp. They'll have some staff support for that as well. But we do, talk a lot about nutrition, balanced diets, and things like that. And we'll continue to talk with campers about that throughout the summer for those who are interested in, and or may need a little bit more support with that while they're with us. So we're on to our last few slides here before we get to the final Q&A. Evening program is something that's a really fun time at camp. Before we get to the fun pictures that you see here, we do something called evening meeting every night right after dinner. That's the chance just to review the day, what's going on the next day or tomorrow. And most importantly, we give teens and staff alike a chance to recognize each other for some of their really great accomplishments while they're at camp. And that sort of praising the successes that our teens are having in a more public format is really important for their confidence and their awareness, that people are seeing and noticing some of the really great things that they're doing. So that happens right after dinner, and then we'll break into a fun evening activity. Typically, we're doing things like going out for mini golf or bowling, like you see pictured here. We'll do things on campus too, like movie nights, talent shows, game nights, campfires with s'mores. We do a variety of different things. Again, they're lightly structured, but just fun opportunities for teens to stay socially connected with one another. And the evening activities are are not like optional, opt in, opt out for the most part. There are some days, maybe after a long day trip, we might have a more chill evening activity and make it an optional thing. But for the most part, everything you're seeing, teens are doing. We do also do July 4th fireworks. That is an optional one though, because it definitely requires people to stay up a little bit later. And we know that not all teens love the sound of fireworks too. So that's an optional one. We have different day outings that will go on as well while we're at camp. So some of that is exploring small towns around campus and giving teens chances to explore those areas. Last summer, we went to Plymouth. This summer, we're hoping to add in Salem to that mix as well. And Cambridge is something we did last year too. We also do a hike day to the Blue Hills Reservation, which is right next to campus. It's more like a nature walk with a little undulation. It's not a huge mountain, as many of you may know. We're in that area. And then we also do an adventure trip. That's a trip where campers get to choose between going into a local ropes course, river kayaking trip, or going to Canopy Lake Park, which is an amusement park. And that often is the most popular one, I will say. But again, lots of opportunities for choice built into our day outings. And some of the most popular day outings are when we go into Boston. When we do this, we typically are taking the T, which is the metro, into the city. We have really safe and secure ways and structured ways of doing that to make sure we're all traveling together and safely. And we spend about 3 days total in Boston, combined between these day trips. Some are full day, some are half day. But we're seeing all that the city really has to offer, and definitely being tourists and owning it and having a lot of fun with it. So we're checking out all the hot spots, Fenway Park tours, Museum of Fine Arts, Museum of Science, the aquarium, zoo, Faneuil Hall Marketplace. We'll do the Freedom Trail tour. Again, it's a lot of different options. And every time we're going into the city, teens typically have 3 or so options that they're choosing from between each of those attractions, and then figuring out, which ones they're most interested in. We also check out things like the North End, Boylston Street, different shopping districts, so teens can have a chance to explore some of those areas a little bit more independently too. So with that about wraps up our content for this evening. Again, we'll definitely do some Q&A after this, but before we get to that, just want to chat really quickly with you all about next steps and sort of what's coming up from here. So certainly in the next day or so, check your inbox. We're going to be emailing out the recording of this with a few links that we noted during the session today to all of you. So keep an eye out for that. And if Beyond Akeela feels like something you want to learn more about or talk with us about and you haven't done yet, the best way to really start this process is to set up a call with us to sort of mutually assess if Beyond Akeela feels like the right fit for your team, the right peer group, right staff support. As we talked about earlier, we talked a little bit about the camper profile, but it's always a great starting point before you start the application process, just to have a quick conversation with us, again, to mutually assess, hey, does this feel like the right fit? And if so, let's get the application process started. And as I mentioned, applications are ready to go. So you can get started with the application online when you're ready. We'll link you to that from the, in the email that I send out with the recording. There's different questionnaires that we ask families to complete, teens to complete, and then different professionals in their teens' lives who work with them either at school, mental health providers. And the final step in the application process is we'll do a Zoom just like this with teens, just to give them a chance to get to know us a little bit more, ask us questions about Beyond Akeela too, and we'll get to know them obviously through that call. So those are the next steps. And with that, I want to thank you all for being with us tonight. We'll get to a little more Q&A here in a second. If you have gotten what you need out of this so far, feel free to hop off. If you'd like to hang around for a little bit more Q&A, we're going to get started with that right now. So Pratt, I am ready for more questions if you got them.
Awesome. Yes, we do. Our first one is, in this program, would you say that most campers do not know each other?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I think we have 3 different distinct groups of teens coming into Beyond Akeela. So the majority of teens coming to Beyond Akeela are totally new to the world of Akeela. They've never been to Camp Akeela before, our younger camp that I mentioned. They've never been to Beyond Akeela before. This is most true in our foundation cohort, which is entirely new teens. We may have one teen each summer who has been to Camp Akeela before, but really for the most part, that is a totally new group of peers meeting each other for the first time when they get to camp. We'll also have teens who have done Camp Akeela before. Typically, those teens will enter in at our transition cohort and make up about a third of that cohort. And then another third of that cohort will be teens who have done Beyond Akeela the year before and are now coming back to Beyond Akeela. And then the other third of that cohort is typically totally new teens as well. And then that's a similar mix in our post-grad cohort also. So it's not a community where if you come in your 10th, 11th, or 12th grade year, you're going to feel like you don't know anyone and everyone knows each other. It's definitely not that type of environment at all.
Awesome. And if a student is out of town, could you assist them with getting on their return flight home, or do parents have to pick them up?
Yeah, so I think travel and independent travel is a great way to start and finish Beyond Aquila for teens. So we do pickups at Boston Logan Airport for teens flying in that day. Parents do not have to accompany them. We can meet teens at their gates or at baggage claim. And on the back end, for teens who are flying home independently, yes, we can get them to the airport. We can help escort them to through security too. At a minimum, though, for everyone, we're helping them check their bags through and making sure they know where their gate is, making sure that they're set with money for buying lunch and things like that, and then they can go from there.
Awesome. And are all campers required to do the hike?
That's a great question. So there are two different options when we go to the Blue Hills Reservation. One is a very short loop around the reservoir at Blue Hills. It is totally flat. Parts of it are paved too, so it is a very, very short walk that some teens can opt into, and then other teens will choose to do the other hike. If we feel like for health reasons, for one reason or another, a camper is not going to be in the right spot to do, or it's going to be just risky for them to do that hike, we'll talk with the camper, we'll talk with their parents about that ahead of time, but otherwise everyone goes to Blue Hills and does one of those two hikes.
Awesome. And if you could go over the number of roommates every camper is going to have.
Yeah, so everyone's going to have one roommate. So each room is going to have two people in it.
And how often are the outings?
How often?
Often
Okay,
are the outings during camp?
yeah. So I would say in a typical week, there's going to be 3 or 4 either full day or half day trips. Typically, it would be no more than like 2 full day trips in a week, and then maybe 2 half day trips mixed in.
Awesome. And this is kind of two-part question, but one, how quickly do we fill up? And the second part is, our daughter is very concerned about bullying and how disagreements are handled at camp.
Yeah, awesome. So in terms of how quickly we fill up, I would say soon. All of our cohorts at this point are about a little over half full. So if this is something that you're interested in doing, really to guarantee your spot, I would really recommend working on this and starting to move forward with the application process as soon as you can, certainly this month. And then the other question was about bullying and how disagreements are handled. So that's a really great and an important question. Many of the teens who have come to Beyond Aquila have unfortunately been on the other end of the bullying. And it's really important that we have a zero tolerance policy for that at Beyond Aquila. If we have any sense that there is malintent from one teen to another, and it is being done in a targeted way that is making someone feel uncomfortable at camp or not welcome at camp, that is not something we are going to allow. And if it becomes something, we're going to be talking with campers about it, helping them work through it, trying to redirect that type of behavior. If it's something that becomes persistent and is an ongoing issue, then we're talking about someone going home, or the person who's doing the bullying or the targeting in that situation. That said, we have a community of teens who are want to socially engage with each other, want to make these new connections. So that is not something that comes up. I would say at Beyond Aquila, we have a group of teens who are kind and respectful of others, and we really emphasize that even before camp starts. We talk about it on Zooms that we'll do with teens in the spring, and really make sure that people who are coming to Beyond Aquila are coming with really great intent.
And A parent asked, like a postgrad student is not certain about college. They think this program would very much help, but are curious if the teens have to be more college driven.
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think sometimes that's an individual conversation with families too. So whoever's asking that, I think it'd be really great for us to talk through it over the phone. But we have had teens who, even in the post-grad cohort, are still sort of figuring out if college is going to be coming for them. Maybe they're considering a gap year instead that next year as they figure it out. I will say probably 80% of the teens in the post-grad cohort typically know what they're doing that fall, whether it's a college, going straight to a four-year school or a community college. And there's going to be some who are going to be doing a gap year as well. But for the most part, they sort of know what that next year is going to look like for them. But again, if you don't have to be necessarily so college driven with that one track mind, let's say, to be successful at Beyond Akeela. As you saw, a lot of our program is just fun and not necessarily college focused per se, but sort of lends its hand to working on skills that are going to be, helping transition teams from college capable to college ready, I would say.
Awesome. Our next question is, can we accommodate like specific roommate requests?
Yeah, that's a really good question. That is something that can come up. It has happened in the past. We have helped facilitate roommate requests. I would say typically our preferences in working with teens and welcoming them into camp is to set them up with someone that they don't know as a roommate. That's a really great chance to practice a roommate relationship. That said, if both families really want two teens who know each other before camp to be roommates, we'll talk about it with them. We'll also set up some guidelines about how we don't want that to turn into these two people hanging out together the entire time and not necessarily branching out to the larger community. But that's something that is an option if families are interested. But again, our preference really is to put teens together with someone that they don't know while they're for the roommate.
Awesome. Our next question is, how many teens are in a cohort?
Yeah, it's about 15, no more than really 15 in the cohort.
And what are our dates of our sessions?
Yes, we do two different sessions. The first is June 26th through July 14th, and the second is July 17th through August 4th. I will make a note to put our dates and rates in the follow-up email that we send out.
Hold on, sorry, I lost my. Okay, this may, but can we see our teen during camp time? And because like location wise, because we're so close, it would feel strange not to connect.
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, that's a new question for us. When we were at Franklin Pierce in the middle of nowhere in New Hampshire, that did not come up very often. But now that we're right outside Boston, that is something that families have asked. And we do not have opportunities for like visitation, let's say, between families and their teens. For one, it's just not possible for everyone. If we were a local program, maybe that would be something that we would do, but really teens are coming from all over the place. So it's hard for us to say to one family, yes, you can do it. For other families, they just don't have that opportunity. It can feel unfair to certain teens while they're at camp. And also, we really want camp to feel like an independent experience that our teens, and I think this is the main thing, we really want them to feel like they had the successful, independent experience away from home and without necessarily the support of their parents or the adults in their lives. So that is something that, sometimes that visitation can take away from. But we do have opportunities to set up one phone call while your teen's at camp. If they have a birthday, they can also set up a phone call you can set up a phone call with your teen on their birthday separate from that other call. But again, we really want this to feel like an independent experience for them, a chance for them to independently problem solve, decision make, and not necessarily rely on parents as crutches for that.
Awesome. Our next question is, how do we support introverts or if teens are not accustomed or love large group settings?
Yeah, that's a great question. And we get a mix of teens each summer who, are more extroverted and some who are more introverted too. It's definitely a good blend of that every year. For someone who's introverted, a lot of it, and this tactic, I would say like we apply a different strategy to working with each team based on that team, where this is not like a one size fits all approach, let's say, but typically with a team who is introverted and less apt just to join in with an ongoing activity or a group of peers who are hanging out. A lot of that's going to be staff developing some rapport with that team, talking with them at meals, maybe trying to help them engage in conversations with their peers at meals, let's say, but learning a little bit more about what makes them tick, what do they enjoy, and then playing matchmaker to some extent too, and saying, oh, hey, I know that Tim really likes playing board games too. Maybe you and Tim and I can go into the lounge during free time later today and play a board game. What do you think about that? And that gives the team a little bit of time to process that. We're not just throwing that on them right before free time. Let's say we're talking about that at lunch. And then again, just giving them a little more time to think about it and then previewing what it might be like. Do you want to invite Tim in? So that's going to be the type of coaching. And again, that individualized approach we're going to provide to teams when it comes to that. And Pratt, was there a second part to that question that I missed?
No, but just like if teens don't love like large groups.
Oh, right, yeah. And a lot of the activities we're doing too, I'll say just to that end, are small groups. So typically it's like 4 to 10 people in a group doing any of the activities that you've seen. Sometimes like the day trips, we go on bigger, travel in bigger groups, but then we'll separate out into smaller groups too once we're actually at the destination. So it never feels like we're all doing something like 1 to 50 all the time.
Awesome. Our next question is, what do we do if a teen isn't connecting with their peers or anyone even after a few days?
Yeah, so in those cases, we're certainly going to be communicating that with you as a family to talk about what we're seeing at camp and how we can, partner again with you to best support your teen. But we're going to talk through the different social situations that are coming up for them and help, again, talking a little bit more about their interests, what gets them socially motivated. And again, this is just everything is going to be unique given the situation and sort of, maybe what the barriers to them socially interacting with their peers has been, but we're going to do whatever we can to break those barriers down, whether that's creating, a certain type of activity that they can do with another peer during a free time that we wouldn't regularly do, let's say, or helping them identify different things that are coming up in their interactions with their peers that might be frustrating other peers too, and how that might be affecting their social relationships. So they can learn from that and then try something new or try and remediate whatever that situation was. So those are going to be the different techniques that we use. But again, it varies based on the situation and the team.
Awesome. And do kids get homesick, and how do we handle homesickness if it's like someone's first time away from home?
Yeah, I'd say, we definitely have teens who still will get homesick even in this age. I was one of those kids too when I was 16, 17. Like I did not want to go away from home. I was very fortunate that my parents eventually just kicked me out and said, you're going on this trip and you're doing it. And I survived, even though I was homesick. And that was before I ended up in college, obviously. But yes, teens will get homesick. And then again, we're going to individualize our approach to teens in those situations. Sometimes it's helpful to talk and process what they miss about home. Sometimes it's more helpful just to redirect their attention to camp. That's often where we default to, is trying to get them focused on some of the really fun things that are happening here, maybe encouraging them to write a letter home to talk about some of the fun things that they're doing. And we'll let you know too as a family what's going on here and what we're doing to support your teen. And yeah, we have a mix of teens who have been to away camps before, and sometimes this is their first experience with it too.
Great. Our next question is, if you could go over how the phone situation works when we're on our day trips in Boston.
Yeah, that's a really great question, and definitely something I forgot to add in. So thank you to whoever out there asked that question. So when we go out on really any day outing, we actually have some camp cell phones that we'll bring with us. So when we go into, let's say, Faneuil Hall Marketplace, typically how we would set that up, we're all traveling together as a group. Before we've even gotten there, we're splitting, and happens at campus. Campers will split up into groups of, let's say, 4 or 5 teens. And there's going to be a staff member assigned to each group too. So they know, hey, this is my crew when I'm traveling. And going into Boston, this is the group I know I'm responsible for. When we're walking to our meeting spot in Faneuil Hall, when we're on the tee, this is the group of people that I need to be with, right? So they focus on a smaller group as opposed to a larger group. Each of those groups is also going to get a camp phone. And that's we have our own sort of wireless plans that we use for those. And all of the staff's numbers are also programmed in those phones too. We always have a central meeting spot whenever we break out into smaller groups and let teens explore independently. We do so, we also never really do so for more than like an hour and a half, 2 hours at a time. And we set some really established boundaries. And then campers know they can, we exchange texts with them first too, so just so they know who to text in that situation should something come up or who to call. And we obviously have our own records of like who has which phone. So we have a lot of different parameters and structure around it to make sure that it's still done safely, but they do have a way to communicate with us, if needed, for sure.
And our next question is if you could go over how we handle medications during day trips and how we handle it on regular days.
Yeah. So we have a registered nurse on staff. It's a state law in Massachusetts that all medication has to be held in our health center. And medication includes both prescription drugs, over-the-counter medicines, vitamins, anything. So there cannot be pills in dorm rooms at Beyond Akeela. So how we do that, we work with a pill packaging company. It's called Camp Meds. And families will send in prescriptions, different supplements that their teens may take as well to Camp Meds. They pre-package everything for us in a really easy to dispense way. I always tell people I could dispense it, given how well labeled everything is and how it's labeled for us. But the nurses on a daily basis will take the meds that need to be passed out at breakfast, lunch, dinner to those meals. If there's like an afternoon med at a certain time, that will also come to like the snack hour, let's say, that we have in the afternoon. And then in the evening time, the campers will come to the health center, which is in our dormitory, to collect their meds. We know a lot of teens at home are responsible for their own medication. They have access to it whenever they want, which is obviously different than when they're at camp. So instead of just like handing out medication to teens, we do ask that they take the initiative to go seek out the medication. But we're also not going to let them not take the medication. So if a teen is supposed to take a breakfast med and they just forget to come to the nurse's station at breakfast, then we're going to make sure that they get the medication and then talk with them about, okay, what's the next strategy you're going to use to make sure you remember, or do you need a reminder before you come to breakfast? Whatever that's going to be, that's what we're going to do with that teen. We go out on day trips. We have trip rosters, obviously, that we'll send out with them. And then we're also going to identify a trip leader and then a medication leader on each trip. That staff member is going to be responsible for distributing that medication with first aid kit. We'll always have at least one first aid CPR trained staff member on each trip as well. And that person is going to be distributing medication to teens as needed. We'll also take out any as needed medications, backup EpiPens, et cetera, as appropriate on each day trip too.
Awesome. And what is the age group of our campers? And if a teen is entering the 11th grade in the fall, is that okay?
Yeah, so youngest cohort is teens who have just completed their sophomore year of high school. So it sounds like that would be the age group of the family who asked that question. Oldest age group are teens who have just completed their senior year of high school or one gap year. So that generally works out to like 16 to 19. Sometimes there's a 15-year-old, let's say, in the foundation cohort.
Awesome. Do campers need their own money for their own spending money for outings?
Yeah, so we encourage families to send their teens with some spending money. The amount varies, and we know too that a lot of teens, are using debit cards or credit cards in their own lives already now. So, we used to say, "Oh, bring cash," but we know that's not really a thing anymore in a lot of cases. And we still recommend bringing some, just because there are some places we'll go where it's just sort of easier to use cash than it is to use a credit or a debit card. But yes, we definitely encourage families to bring it. Campers are responsible for holding it too. So we're not going to hold their money for them and then bring it on the trip and let them use it. Again, that's part of the life skill of bringing that with them. We'll talk about budgeting earlier on in camp. And for teens who are interested in that and want to learn a little bit more about money management, they can actually set up a budget for themselves while they're at camp with the spending money that they brought.
Awesome. If you could go over our wake up time, our evening lights out time, and whether or not our teens get an alarm.
Yeah, great. Yes to the alarm clock. Every room will have an alarm clock. It is the old school ones you would see in a hotel room, basically. But yes, that's an important thing. If we're not allowing teens to have their cell phones, they have to have some way of being able to wake up. The wake up time really varies. So we don't set a time when, everyone has to be up and moving. Aside from the fact that breakfast is at 8 o'clock and the expectation is that teens are going to be ready to go for that. So we'll preview certainly on the first few nights too. Hey, what is your morning routine going to look like? How much time do you feel like you need for that? Let's make sure we set your alarm clock and be conservative with it. We're going to teach you how to use the alarm clock so they really know. But teens are generally waking up, I'd say anywhere between 7 and like 7:45 typically. And then staff are around to help, facilitate them getting ready in the morning, just to make sure we're all moving in the right direction. Um, in terms of bedtime, we don't have a set, like you have to be asleep, lights out time. We do have quiet hours at 10, which is similar to what you would expect in a college dormitory in general. So teens will hang out in the lounge, going through their, bedtime routines, et cetera, after the evening activity. 10 o'clock, we start asking people to head back to their dorms and start just quieting down for the night, but they don't necessarily have to go to sleep at that time. But if we notice someone's really dragging one day and they say, "Oh, I was just reading until 2 a.m." We'll probably talk with them about how that might affect their experience here or while they're in college too, and the importance of maintaining some good sleep schedules.
Awesome. And kind of clarification question on medication. So are campers allowed to carry their inhalers and EpiPens
Hmm.
with them?
Yes, that's a great question. Yes, so campers can carry EpiPens and inhalers. There are certain forms that we ask that we're required to have families sign if they are going to hold those things. But yes, that's something we really require though. If a teen's going to come to camp and needs an EpiPen, they need to carry that with them. And same thing with an inhaler.
Amazing. And are there any opportunities in the day for unstructured downtime that can be used for quiet time?
Yeah, so I'd say the most important one is what right after lunch, what we call rest hour, and that's really quiet time for everyone. Teens can play like a quiet game in the lounge or something like that, but we're not encouraging social interaction during this time. We're really encouraging them to just chill in their rooms or in the lounge or something that's quiet, basically reading, listening to music. There are other times in the day too. Usually right before lunch, there's a little bit of free time. And then right before dinner for about an hour, there's some free time then too. We don't require that that's quiet time for teens. That can be something where they, are socially interacting with their peers, but can be used certainly as quiet time. If a teen feels like, hey, I just need some decompression time after a long day, they can absolutely do that.
Awesome. And our next question is, how often can teens do art and D&D?
Yeah, so we do, those are both set as camp activities. So if a teen wanted to do art at camp as part of the camp activity, excuse me, they would do that for 4 different sessions. There's also going to be things like we do hobby nights and different activity choice nights where art is typically an option or some special art project. So there's definitely more times that can get infused into their days. Certainly, we encourage teens who love art to bring like drawing pads or something like that too, so that they can just do that in the lounge too if they'd like to. It's a great way to talk with others about what they're drawing, things that they like to draw. That's definitely a common interest at camp. D&D, same thing. So D&D is a really popular activity. At the camp activity level, they can do it 4 different times. And basically how it works is they have a chance to sort of learn about the mechanics of character creation and doing a very, very mini campaign led by one of our staff members. If they would like to do more of that or bring their own characters and have more, for teens who have a little bit more experience with it, that happens during free times. So like that time before dinner, after evening activity are usually good times that we see teens doing D&D. So there's not really like a number per se or how many hours they can do it, but those are generally the time slots that teens would choose to do it.
That was our last question on chat.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you. Those were all really great questions. We really appreciate it. And those of you sticking with us, we know we're at past the hour mark here of our info session. So thank you all for joining tonight. And again, we will send out the recording different links that'll help you get started with the next steps. And we're looking forward to working with you all in the future here. So thank you all. Have a really great night.